Okay, thank you all for coming tonight. I'm delighted to welcome you to the 5th annual collaboration between Albany Public Library and the Adirondack Experience, and this year's True Crime of the Adirondack Zoom series. My name is Megan Kelly. I'm a Programs and Partnerships Librarian at Albany Public Library. I would like to start this evening's program by acknowledging that Albany Public Library is situated on the land of the Mohawk, Haudenosaunee, and the Stockbridge-Munsee Band of Mohicans. The Adirondack Experience is situated on the Aboriginal territories of the Mohawk and Abenaki communities. Indigenous people continue to live in our two regions and practice their teachings and life ways. Tonight we bring you episode 3 in the series, Tales of Crimes and Criminals, as told by the culprits themselves. We are joined by Gem Radio Theater, a small production company based in the Adirondacks, whose mission is to strengthen multi-generational relationships in families and communities by creating opportunities to experience theatrical arts and old-time radio performances. We will start with a recording tonight. After the performances, the cast and the director will be happy to take questions. Please feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Monty, take it away.
Oh, hello friends. I'd like to tell you a story about myself, the good and the bad. You know, we've all had our ups and downs, and I'm here to tell you some of them. My name is Laverne Moore. I was born in Syracuse, New York, August 25th, 1903. I was what you might call a natural athlete. I don't mean to brag, but I just about excelled in every sport I ever tried. I worked out in our attic at home, pulling up on the beams and using weights. I tried out for all sports, but the one I settled on was golf. Yeah, golf. There was just something about it. You know what I mean when I say I was 7 years old and I found a golf ball in the street. And I made myself a club out of a metal pipe elbow and a broom handle. That was fun, except on my first swing. I hit the ball across the street into the window of the local cigar shop. Oops. To my surprise, though, my dad wasn't mad about that. He paid for the window and bought me a set of golf clubs. My older brother Harold taught me the game, and I took to it like a fish to water. I taught myself some pretty amazing tricks, if I do say so myself. One of my favorites was burying 3 golf balls in a sand trap, one on top of the other, and then asking someone which one I should shoot without touching the other ones. People were amazed at that one. Did I tell you I was a big guy? People loved my golf tricks, my oversized golf clubs, and I guess I had charisma, if you don't mind me saying that. I left New York for the first time in my 20s and did what many young men do. I set out for adventure. I went to Florida to try my hand at baseball. I was a powerful hitter and tried out for the Boston Braves, but that didn't work out well. I went to Mexico and then to Nevada. I spent time wandering around with a pack mule. Finally, I landed in California, where my stellar golf game and amazing tricks caught some attention and brought some new acquaintances my way. I played at the Lakeside Golf Course in Hollywood and became the club champion at 30 years old. I met some famous folks too. Do you remember Oliver Hardy? Laurel and Hardy? He was a good buddy of mine, and I even lived with him for a while. People loved it when we would go to the grill at the golf course, and I'd pick him up and I'd put him on the bar. He's a little guy. My size and strength became as well regarded as my golf prowess. I used to have fun making bets with my golf partners, which I usually won. One time I played with Bing Crosby, and naturally I beat him. So he wagered me one last hole, which I won handily using a baseball bat, a shovel, and a rake. To hit 3 strokes on a par 4 hole, I used the rake like a pool cue to sink the ball. Bing and I had a good laugh over that one. Oh, I love my Hollywood days, hobnobbing with the rich and famous. Imagine me, a kid from a blue-collar family from Syracuse, New York, living the high life in California. I felt like I was where I was meant to be, doing my favorite thing with people that appreciated my talent, my charm, and my good looks. It seemed almost too good to be true. And actually, it was. That was the good part. Remember I said the good and the bad? There are a few parts I left out. The first part is that I changed my name when I left New York. I was known after that as John Montague, but most people called me Monty. I really liked the name. Borrowed it from a man I met once. It was a judge. Remember when I said that I left New York for some adventure? Well, there's another reason I left too. It's the same reason I didn't become a professional golfer, intended to avoid the spotlight and having my picture taken during my heyday in Hollywood. You see, I got into some trouble. Some trouble up north in the Adirondacks in the summer of 1930. I had some friends and we went up to Jay, New York, to check out my buddy Roger's cousin-in-law's restaurant as a potential location for a new business adventure, running liquor during Prohibition. Guy has to make a living, you know, after all. Anyway, the restaurant was run by a fellow named Kim Hana, and it was known to be a good place to grab an illegal drink as well as some good Japanese food. Well, the place was located right on Route 9N, and we decided it was too risky of a place to run an illegal business, being that it was right on the rum trail and all that. But considering it was a popular place and the locals, we decided it was most likely a good amount of money on hand in the till. So, yeah, we decided to come back and rob the place. That was a bad decision. The robbery started out fine. 1:30 a.m., we made our move, easily tying up Kim Hana and his family, using our guns to encourage them to give up the money. It was going fine until Kim Hana's father-in-law refused to cooperate, and I was forced to take him down and beat him. In retrospect, I wish I hadn't taken the pipe to him. I used an iron pipe, and I should have been a bit easier. Well, the four of us got away in two roadsters, but the coppers were on the lookout for rum runners, and we made the mistake of driving too fast. During the chase, the other car, driven by my buddy Billy Carlton, tried to trick the coppers by doing a U-turn and heading in the other direction. Well, unfortunately, the fella, John Sherry, who was riding shotgun, leaned over and turned off the lights, causing a spectacular rollover crash. Billy was shortly thereafter hauled to the slammer, and Sherry was killed. While all of that excitement was happening, the car I was riding in got away with the two of us, my buddy Roger and me, and the $700 that we got in the take. Unfortunately, I got into the wrong car, and in my haste to leave the scene of the crime, I had left my golf clubs and some of my stuff in the car that crashed. And unfortunately for Roger, his cousin had been seen during the robbery, so he turned himself in a few weeks after that. I was long gone, however, by now, on my new life as John Montague. I was only visiting my family in Syracuse after all, so it was time for me to move on anyway. Well, you can see now why I'm a bit camera shy when I was out in Hollywood, but darn it, my charisma and my golf talent got the best of me. I got caught up in the limelight and the celebrity of it all, and a reporter wrote an article on me that made it all the way back to New York, where detectives had been waiting for a clue about the one person that got away in the Kim Hanna robbery of 1930. By now it was 1937, and I was summoned back to New York to go on trial for that robbery. That was quite an inconvenience for me, as you can imagine, not to mention the embarrassment of the story revealed to my California friends. I decided to make the best of it and to embrace my past with my usual charisma. It certainly helped that my golfing talent and my celebrity friendships overshadowed the crime itself. When I arrived in Port Henry, I was met by a mob of reporters and fans. Why, I felt like a celebrity myself and quite enjoyed the attention. I even had my golf club sent from California and showed off some of my better tricks to an appreciative sports audience and a sports writer from the United Press. Supreme Court Justice O. Byron Brewster granted me bail and described me as a modern Jean Valjean. I was feeling pretty good by the time my trial started in October that year. I became kind of a local celebrity in Elizabethtown, especially among the ladies who were always asking me for an autograph. I think many people were hoping my famous Hollywood friends would come to watch the trial. They never did come, but many sent statements and depositions attesting to my wonderful character. My actor friends would have been so proud of me too, because I did a good job on the stand, explaining how embarrassed I was to have my belongings found in the getaway car of criminals. So much so that I left town and changed my name. Yeah, well, I found out who my true friends were. That son of a gun Roger, the one who turned himself in after the robbery, testified against me and even accused me of being the one who beat up Kim Hanna's father-in-law, Matt Cobb. The one who gave us such a hard time during the robbery. My other buddy, Billy, well, he'd been driving the getaway car that crashed, swore that I wasn't there that night, that my things were left in the car from a previous outing. Now, that's a true friend. It's good in times when you have friends in high places. My lawyer, he was the same one who defended Dutch Schultz in the famous trial of 1935, where Dutch got off the hook. My lawyer, James Noonan, tore holes in the prosecution one by one. My mother Mary even testified that I was home in bed that night. That was the power of mother's love. I hadn't been in any contact with her since I left in 1930. I think she was pleased to have a celebrity for a son. Don't you agree? When the jury returned the not guilty verdict, my fans, the audience in the courtroom, cheered wildly. Judge Owen tried to shut them down, but to no avail. There was a big celebration and my future looked bright. There was talk about making a movie part where Jackie Gleason would play me in the movie. I continued playing golf exhibitions. Now I was a celebrity in my own right, and I enjoyed every minute of it for the short time that it lasted. My big movie deal, well, that never materialized. I suspect the trial may have had something to do with that. I got married to Esther Plunkett, who passed away in 1947. I was always reaching for the high life I had enjoyed before my trial, but I took to drinking, and that can change a man. I gained weight, which for a big guy like me can affect one's health. My golf game took a slider, and I never went pro. What I liked best was playing golf with a few people that I could impress with my trick shots and enjoying drinks at the club. I had a heart attack in 1947 and was arrested for drunk driving in 1949. So, as you can see, the good days were slipping away. I faded away from the limelight, and my charisma and my self-esteem, that faded away too. I died in 1972. At that time, I was living alone in a motel in Los Angeles. I died alone and broke. But that's okay with me. I had an amazing life. I saw many sides of life, the poor and the rich, the good and the bad. I was a celebrity and a criminal. I was loved by some and hated by others. I can say that I lived my life to the fullest and enjoyed almost every minute of it. How many people can say that? Thank you.
Good day to you all. Do you like my fur? Oh, I know there's many people today that don't like or appreciate fur coats, but this coat was made in 1935, and I'm not about to burn or destroy it. My feeling is we should give gratitude to the critters who sacrificed their lives to keep us old folks warm back in the day. And what better way to do that than to wear them? Oh, yes, thank you. My name is Mildred Harris. Actually, I've got two names, the other one being Mildred Lewis, my real name, but I'll get to that later. I want to tell you a little bit about what life was like back in the 1930s. Ladies of a certain, shall we say, social status wore furs, not only to keep warm, but to display our fashion sense. not only did we give business to the local emporiums, but many trappers back in the day made their time and living in the fur trade to feed their families and to pay for what they needed. Harriet Rega was a woman who lived up in Old Forge in 1924. She was described as the only woman trapper in all of the Adirondacks. Harriet laid 80 traps around Moose River and Nix Lake and lived alone, skinning and tanning the furs herself. She was made out by newspaper reporters to be an odd sort, but you have to appreciate all the work that she did to make a living trapping. I suspicion Harriet loved her furs just as much as I do. I think we were a lot alike in that way. But I wasn't the one to go traipsing around the woods with traps. That's one way we were different. I had a better way to get my furs, but I'll tell you about that later. Are you familiar with Saranac Lake? Nice town, that is, and I used to love to visit places up north. Back in the 1930s, Saranac was a bustling town with loggers and trappers and city folks coming up for the cure at Trudeau Sanatorium. One of the popular places to visit in Saranac Lake was Sam Edelberg's Fur Emporium on Main Street. Sam started out as a tailor in 1907, but then specialized in fur coats for ladies of a certain social status, such as myself. Well, now Sam bought most of his furs from the local trappers like Harriet. So you see how in the circle of living we all supported each other, and hopefully we still do today. Sometimes, though, we take shortcuts, and that was my specialty. In October of 1938, some friends and I came up north for the holidays. Oh, we just loved Saranac Lake with all the shops and the activities. Of course, we went into the Edelberg Fur Emporium. I must tell you that I fell in love with the furs in that place. Oh, my good friend, who I'll call Edith, came with me, and she fell in love too. We tried on many furs, and the clerks were so kind to us, seeing to our comfort and making us feel special. It was hard to decide which furs to purchase, so we decided to come back a few days later to make our final choices. We went back to Edelberg's the following Saturday to finish the deal. Unfortunately, our financial status wasn't one that we could actually afford the furs. So, at the same time Saturday that we were trying on the beautiful furs and chatting it up with the friendly clerks, our male companions were out back behind the store, loosening the locks on the back door. Are you thinking we planned to steal those furs? You would be right. Just before midnight, we four went back to Edelberg's. We parked behind the store, and the door was easy enough to open. Edith and I went right in to do our shopping, just selecting the best furs, while our chauffeurs paid lookout by our fancy green automobile. It was the perfect plan and would have ended well, for everyone except for Sam Edelberg, but for the movie theater next door. The timing was just right for the movie to end at the same time that we went on our midnight shopping spree. God, every time you try to do something, I'm telling you. But It took a few minutes before the folks coming out of the theater to realize it wasn't Sam taking inventory out of a shop, but a robbery. And that was lucky for us. By the time the coppers arrived and set up the roadblocks, we were gone. Oh, the joy! Edith and I in our beautiful furs. Oh, we were giddy with happiness at our $5,000 take from the Fur Emporium. Of course, we kept our favorites, but we had to sell a few just to get some cash. That was probably a mistake because one of our party, Delio Bay, the emotionless and silent witness, was pinched on Long Island and for the crime and brought straight back to Saranac. He was identified by one of the moviegoers and sent to Franklin County Jail to await trial. Such a good friend. He didn't rat out the other three of us. I was living a pretty good life in Illinois for about a few months after that. In the spring of 1939, I was picked up by the police and brought up to Saranac Lake myself and charged with first-degree grand larceny, as well as third-degree burglary. God dang it! Imagine a lady like me being sent to jail. Oh, I was just an accomplice after all, not the mastermind. Oh, I cried so many tears at the thought of being put away. But did I mention to you that I was married? God bless my husband, John. He offered to plead guilty to each and every charge in exchange for keeping me out of the slammer. Now that's a good husband for you. He and that scoundrel, Delio Bay, spent 10 to 20 years doing hard labor at Dannemora. As for Edith, why, she was never caught. And I'm not going to tell you her real name or where she lived after that. I suspect she lived happily ever after with her furs, and I have this one to remind me that crime never pays. Or does it? Just a little.
Afternoon, folks. My name is Alvin Pasco, but most folks called me Sam when I was alive. I was called many more names, none of them very nice ones, but one of those I liked most was the Thurman Terror. Now you look like a fine group of law-abiding citizens in your nice clothes and drinking tea and eating fancy food. In my life, I wasn't so lucky. In fact, I was misunderstood for most of my 46 years here on the Lord's green earth. You might even say I had a harsh life. Led me to do some things I probably shouldn't have done. Let me tell you about it. I was unfortunate enough to be born into the Pasco clan from Thurman in 1872. My daddy, Leander, was a bad seed. My Uncle Charlie was a chicken thief shot dead while robbing a hen house. Maybe that set Daddy off on a bad way of life, but in any case, my daddy was shot and killed by my sister's husband, Cal Wood. I don't know why, but I heard tell that my sister Maddie actually smiled when she heard that Daddy was dead. I didn't like Daddy much either. In fact, Cal and I drew straws to see who would do the deed, and Cal won. Actually, he lost in the end because he was the first person to ride the electric chair in Dannemora for that murder. Maddie stopped smiling after that. Well, with Daddy gone, I was left an orphan, and what with my mother dying the year before that, who could blame me for trying to make my way in the world the best way I knew how? When I needed something, I took it. And for some reason, folks didn't take kindly to that. So then I had to set them straight by fighting or brandishing my favorite gun, big shotgun. It's right over there. Come up, take a look at it if you want to. Well, it wasn't my fault people were afraid of me. If they just let me have what I wanted, there wouldn't have been no trouble. No, sir. That's when folks started calling me the Thurman Terror. It's got a nice ring to it, don't you think? But it's misleading. It makes folks think I'm a bad seed, like my daddy. Oh, it wasn't really all that bad. I didn't mean to shoot Constable Wood in the leg when he saw me borrowing some sheep from a neighbor. No, I didn't know he was related to my brother-in-law, Cal, the one who killed my daddy. That was just a coincidence. Well, that little incident, just a scratch to the constable, cost me 6 months in the Albany lockup. Didn't improve my temper at all, I'll tell you. Oh, and all those forest fires they said I started? Well, somebody must have been following me around and starting them just to make me look bad. I pled guilty to that one just to get them off my back, and they thanked me by sending me to Dannemora for 4 more years. By the time I got back to Thurman in 1910, I was ready to settle down. But bad luck came my way again. I was innocently walking down the road and somebody shot me in the hip. I knew it was old man Wilsey, but nobody believed me. That shot laid me low for a while, and I never got to pay old man Wilsey back for it. I did hear that he lived in fear of me for the rest of his life. Good. Did I mention to you that Daddy taught me how to get around the woods and hunt and trap and cut timber? I was good at all those things. I could take down a tree and buck it up faster than 2 men than working together. That's how strong I was. Well, in 1912, I had a good year trapping, and I was saving my favorite coonskin for my winter hat. Then one of my so-called friends came into my house and stole it. Oh, did that make me mad. But I had a hard time getting him arrested since the law didn't like me much. Instead, that same year, they arrested me for stealing timber. I can't help it if the owner of that tree couldn't pick out his lumber after it was all cut up. Honestly, I was just trying to make a living. The judge sentenced me to 10 years for that. Bit harsh, don't you think? Then he thought better of it and made me a deal. He said if I left Thurman and stayed away for 10 years, he would let me go. Can you believe that? Huh. Nobody tells me what to do. So I showed myself around town with my gun for a few days before leaving, just to show them I was an independent man. Guess I stayed too long, though, because they rounded me up and sent me to Dannemora anyway. Dang! Did I mention to you that I hate Dannemora? I sure wasn't going to stay there for 10 more years. No, sir. I tried starving myself. That didn't work. I tried eating broken glass, but that didn't work either. I was plain miserable. But then a savior came my way by the name of Francis Cantwell, a lawyer from Saranac Lake. He took on my case, got me released in a little over 5 years. Hallelujah. By now it was 1918, and I tried to live a clean life. Truly, I did. I took to a lumbering job in Glens Falls, and that was working well for a while. Then I got wind that my cousin and her husband, Orly Eldridge, and their children had moved into my homestead back in Thurman and claiming half ownership. I couldn't let that happen, could I? I just had to go back, take care of business. Trespassers were not allowed on my property, whether I was there or not. I couldn't go empty-handed to parley with Orly. So I stopped at my buddy James's place and borrowed his trusty Winchester to take along. Well, our meeting didn't go well. Orly wasn't in the mind to leave my place, although I said the women and children could stay. I encouraged him with the gun to leave, and he did go right to the deputy sheriff. Well, for some reason, they called the newly formed state troopers from over in Warrensburg, and they came all right. When they found me over at James's place, all hell broke loose. Somehow, I ended up shooting Orly in the gut. Well, I knew this wasn't going to go well for me, so I ran off, taking a bullet in my back as I ran. That hurt like a son of a gun, but life made me tough, and I wasn't going down easy. I knew the woods better than most, and I was on the run for 10 days. They even brought down hounds from Comstock, but the rain prevented them from getting the smell. I almost got away again, but they caught up with me at Hewitt's place in the Glen. I think his wife didn't take kindly to my visit and tipped them off. Curse her. I only wanted a hot meal, for crying out loud. Anyway, I took a bullet that night. That did me in. I stepped outside for a bit of fresh air, and that's when they got me. I was tired and cold, and I told them everything I did in my 10 days on the run. The wound from that bullet I took when I first ran off was almost healed by then. Yes, sir. Because that bullet had worked its way out of me, and I packed it with mud every night. The doctor said it was a miracle, and he was nice enough to stay the night with me and with a handful of lawmen who weren't about to let me out of their sight. I fessed up to my sins just to make them feel good. But you can see that I was simply misunderstood. A man with good intentions that went wrong. In the end, I finally did get the respect I had been looking for all my life. Almost everyone in town came to my funeral. They even canceled school so the children could come. Some people said they wanted to make sure I was dead, but I think I was secretly admired by many. I even got a plot in the Pasco family cemetery. Together again with Daddy and the family clan.
Hello, everybody. I'm Cheryl Bronstein. I am the Director of Interpretation at the Adirondack Experience, and we truly hope that you enjoyed this evening's performance presented by Gem Radio Theater. It is my great pleasure, we're kind of getting everybody online here, to introduce you to the people who brought this production to life. Glen Repko played Monty. Glen has performed for 3 seasons with Gem Radio Theater, having performed in It's a Wonderful Life, Ghost at Garnet Hill Lodge, Leaves Torn Asunder, The Lone Ranger, and others. He's done many voiceovers and adcasters throughout his life. He lives in Scroon Lake with his wife, Sue, and dog Keeper. Lily, my dog, might want to actually say hello, and stays busy with local organizations and town activities. Next, we have Barbara Westbrook, who portrayed Mildred. Barbara loves North Country Theater. You may have seen her in Our Town Theater productions at Tannery Pond Center in North Creek, as well as the Adirondack Center for the Arts in Blue Mountain Lake. She has been most active in Gem Radio Theater, performing in The Lone Ranger and It's a Wonderful Life, as well as other Gem Radio productions. And finally, we have Dennis Wilson, who brought the terrible Sam to life. Dennis is a retired teacher who began his acting career with North Creek's Our Town Theater Group when he appeared with his first play, The Book of Days. Since then, he has been active with Our Town both on stage and behind the scenes. And I also want to introduce Robin J., who is the co-founder of Gem Radio Theater and who wrote the stories that we all heard this evening. Robin is also a retired teacher from Indian Lake. Gem Radio Theater's mission is to strengthen multi-generational relationships in families and communities by creating opportunities to experience theatrical arts and old-time radio performances. We truly hoped you enjoyed the Gem Radio Theater production presented this evening. And now we welcome your questions for Robin and our evening's cast. And please go ahead and use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen and we'll take any questions. So the first question is, are there any books that describe these stories? Robin, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, not specifically. When we are putting together a story, usually I find a character either in a book or a mention in an article, and then I go ahead and I pull from Wikipedia. I go to town historians and little newspaper clippings and to get the foundation of the story. But then because we're a theater group, I add character to each person kind of based on the background and the history. We certainly didn't know any of these people, but it's really fun to find a story, find a character that is interesting, whether famous or infamous. You write the story and you get an idea of what their character should have been, and then you find an actor to create that character. And these three are three of our finest that can do that.
Great, thank you. So I've got a question, and I actually am going to put this to all of you. What were or are your favorite radio plays, if you have any?
Mine definitely would be The Lone Ranger.
Mine too, absolutely. Hi-yo Silver, away.
I like The Lone Ranger, but we also had a great time doing Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did a couple of stories there, and that was a good time as well.
Robin, do you have one?
Yes, I do. Actually, I would say that my very favorite one that speaks to my heart was Leaves Torn Asunder. And that one was based on this book from Glenn Pearsall. And I wrote a radio play with his blessing based on this book. And the story was about the Civil War and the Adirondacks, the people and the families who went to fight. And even though this is a fictional book, many of the people in the book have descendants who live here now, and they're buried in our local cemeteries. And for me, it was just so deep and moving and true. We do graveyard walks, and sharing the stories of people that lived and died locally is something that really speaks to my heart. Mm-hmm. And so this was my favorite one so far. I'm sure there will be more.
I have a question. How do you come up with some of the stories, that you present as part of the theater?
Is that a question for me?
It's you and anybody who works with you from the creative end of things.
I like things that are a little unusual. So we try and do projects that are unique, interesting, and sometimes relevant, as in history. And mostly we really like to have fun too with our theater. We have a Foley artist that makes the sound effects whenever we do a radio play. And we are on book. That's part of what we do because it's radio theater. And when you have a book in your hand, you can work on your character because you're not worried about it. And of course, we are of a certain age. So memorizing pages and pages of monologues, that's very stressful. So we just like to have fun when we do it.
So Kevin is asking if Gem Radio has a broadcast archive. I'm not sure how many times you've actually done anything that's been filmed or recorded in some way. So maybe speak to that a little bit.
We are very small, single sole proprietorship company of me and my daughter and my wonderful friends that are so talented. We have only a Facebook page. We don't even have a true website. We have live streamed some of our history projects. And I think we live streamed maybe a radio play, but we are really small potatoes. Keeping it simple and small and fun.
It certainly was quite fun. So Joy is asking if you have found other crime stories that you might use in the future.
I think we have a few other ones, but we're always looking for some. So if anybody out there has an idea for us, please get it to us somehow and we will make a story.
We also have interesting characters, like one of them is a bootlegger. So she's not particularly a historic character, but she's someone that we found in history that made, a great story.
One of the characters I played in one of our graveyard walks was a fellow who developed a new strain of beagles specifically for rabbit hunting. And that was really interesting.
So Dennis, maybe you can actually start with this next question, because clearly you had a lot of fun playing Sam. How do you all prepare for the characters that you're playing? And do you base it on other things that you've seen? Can you speak to that?
Well, Robin gives me a script of a role that she thinks I'd be good in, and I just read the script. I do internet searches for background material and information, and then I practice it, sometimes just by myself at home, sometimes in rehearsal, and run with it.
Barbara,
Google's
do you want to also take that one? Do you do anything differently?
Well, of course, we all like to research our roles and everything, but we also have to kind of dig down into our creativeness and have fun coming up with little things about the character. And of course, the director gives us input.
my character, Monty, Google's a great resource, of course. So I looked into that, and there aren't any archives. There's just some old pictures and some old stories. So you kind of read it, you read the script, and you say, how do you think that person should be portrayed? And you give it your shot. And I'm sure each one of us would do it in a different way, but each one would be creative and would be the way we think that character is.
Yeah, you have to read the script, get familiar with the heart of the of the character, the basis of the emotional and psychological basis of the character. And that's what I do, and that's what I try to portray.
For history tea, I really like anything that's the woman is a little out there, a little fun, you know, that's the characters I'm drawn to.
Well, we certainly all enjoyed, each of you had such a distinct character and clearly brought such a lot to it. So Robin, this is probably a question more for you. And again, you are a radio theater, but somebody is asking, how do you select props, costumes, the set, which I know you had a little fun with, kind of trying to give everybody a distinct identity.
I have a barn that is full of costumes. And so we use some of the costumes over and over again. We really try to dress our characters appropriately for their period. Sometimes I have rented costumes when we told a story that I won't tell you what it is, but we rented from the costumer some a big hoop skirt and everything. And so we most likely make it work with what we have. And I have a wonderful collection of Foley tools for our Foley artist, who is Jason Dora from Indian Lake, and he creates all the sound effects live on stage. So we just did a play. We did West Side Story. We helped to direct that, and we needed a siren. So I have a hand crank siren that's really cool. So I do have quite a wonderful collection of costumes and Foley equipment. And our set is simple because lots of times we travel. We will travel and we sometimes just have a screen in the back. We have done history and the Lone Ranger at the Hillview Library. So an old library is a wonderful background. And we just try to keep it simple if we have to move around. We have a Foley table. We have coat racks. We put hats. And our actors sometimes are playing multiple roles. And Barbara Westbrook and Dennis and Glenn too, they might change hats. They change voices. Barb played a man and then she became a woman, and she had an apron that she whipped around, took off her cowboy hat, and then she did a woman's voice. So it's really being versatile, using your voice, your body language to create each different character. Does that answer the question, I hope?
I think so. We have several people who asked how they can learn about upcoming performances. And I do have to make a plug for the fact that the Adirondack Experience is thrilled to be welcoming Gem Radio Theater this summer on July 28th for one of their history teas. I think also the Facebook link was put in the chat. But Robin, certainly if you'd like to say anything to encourage people, like how do they find out more about what's going on? They can follow you on Facebook, I imagine, other ways that they can find out what you've got coming ahead.
Mostly it's on Facebook, because we don't have our own theater. We just have my barn that's full of our theater props. So usually Facebook is where everything goes, and then we all share out, and whichever venue we're going to, they also will share. We have 4 history teas in different places coming up over the summer. And then we'll be bringing the Sherlock Holmes Night Before Christmas back to the Indian Lake Theater because we had to cancel our February performance with a big snowstorm. But we'll be heading back there with that radio play, most likely in December of 2025. So you can look at Indian Lake Theater for that.
We do have a couple of suggestions that have come up. I think one of these actually might be a contemporary issue. Somebody has mentioned a court case between Hosley and Curry over the DA in Hamilton County, which I think is actually quite a contemporary story. But somebody else mentioned the Earl murder in Hope Falls, which I don't know anything about, and I'm very intrigued. Barbara, are you familiar with that one?
No, but it really does sound interesting.
The Earl, is it Earl, E-A-R-L-E?
E-A-R-L, murder in Hope Falls.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm writing that down.
So we do have someone who's also interested in how to book with you, and we can go ahead and follow up with Lee with their contact information. Somebody wants to know what about the villages and towns that are the locations for the story. What other places have you had the settings for some of the stories that you've produced?
Well, we did Garnet Hill, Ghosts at Garnet Hill. That was set in this area based on a book from the 1950s. We have one of our history stories is based on a fellow from Lake George. We really try to keep it Adirondack. And sometimes if there's even a small connection to the Adirondacks, we will go with that just to have a variety of stories. We do have a Sybil Luddington. She was the female Paul Revere. That's one of our stories. And even though she did not ride in the Adirondacks, we wanted to tell her story because we thought it deserved to be told.
Well, I look forward to seeing some more. So I would like to thank all of you for joining us this evening, both our cast and Robin, as well as all of you who tuned in to see this production. We do have our final Zoom in our True Crime of the Adirondacks a week from tonight. We're going to be welcoming New York Times bestselling author Jennifer Donnelly, whose novel, A Northern Light, retells the horrific murder of Grace Brown. So that is 1 week from tonight, Wednesday the 16th at 7 o'clock. And we'll go ahead and post the link to register for that in the chat right before we sign off. But again, we hope to see you this summer at the Adirondack Experience. We welcome Gem Radio Theater on July 28th. So hope everybody has a good evening. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.